It was a dark and stormy night, and the wind howled outside the small villa, where Mr. and Mrs. White sat by the fire with their son, Herbert. Their home was modest, but warm and inviting. Mr. White was in the middle of a game of chess with his son, while Mrs. White knitted nearby. The air was peaceful until a knock at the door broke the stillness. Mr. White opened the door to reveal a tall, burly man in uniform. Sergeant Major Morris, an old friend recently returned from India. He stepped in, shook off the rain, and joined the family by the fire. As they chatted, he began sharing tales of his time overseas, stories filled with mystery and danger. Eventually, the conversation turned to a strange object he carried. A dried, shriveled monkey's paw. It looked like nothing more than a withered curiosity. But Morris said it held a terrifying power. A fakir in India had placed a spell on it, to prove that fate ruled all lives and shouldn't be tampered with. The paw would grant 3 wishes to 3 different men, but always with consequences. Sounds like nonsense, said Herbert, laughing. But Morris was serious. He admitted he had used the paw himself, and though he wouldn't reveal what he had wished for, the grim expression on his face suggested it hadn't ended well. He tried to throw the paw into the fire, but Mr. White snatched it back, intrigued by the idea. Later that evening, after Morris had gone, Mr. White, half joking, held the paw and wished for £200, just enough to pay off their mortgage. The paw twisted in his hand with a strange shudder. The family laughed nervously, but nothing happened. Probably just our imagination, Mr. White said with a chuckle, placing the paw on a shelf and forgetting about it for now. The next morning felt ordinary. Herbert went to work as usual at the machinery company. Mr. and Mrs. White stayed home, amused that the wish hadn't worked. The next day passed quietly. Mr. White felt uneasy, but told himself it was all imagination. He avoided looking at the monkey's paw on the shelf. It seemed to stare back, lifeless yet watching. In the afternoon, Herbert came home, joking about the lack of riches. No bags of gold yet. That night, the family went to bed content. They thought nothing more of the wish. But fate had begun its work, and fate does not like to be mocked. They even joked about how the money might fall from the sky. But that afternoon, a stranger appeared at their door. He was a well-dressed man with a nervous look. After hesitating, he delivered horrifying news. Herbert had been killed in a tragic accident at work. He had fallen into the machinery. The company deeply regretted the incident and wished to offer compensation, exactly £200. Mr. and Mrs. White were devastated. Their cheerful home became filled with mourning and silence. A week passed. One night, Mrs. White woke suddenly. She had an idea, no, a demand. She shook her husband awake. The paw, we still have 2 wishes left. We can bring Herbert back. Mr. White was horrified. He's been dead for over a week. That's not natural. But Mrs. White insisted. Driven by grief, he retrieved the monkey's paw and made the second wish. I wish my son alive again. The wind picked up outside. The house creaked. Nothing else happened. They sat in silence, waiting. Then came a knock at the door. Slow, hollow, repeating. Mrs. White gasped and ran toward the door. "It's him! It's Herbert!" she cried in hope. But Mr. White didn't move. He remembered the condition of Herbert's body. He hadn't seen it, but knew it had been horribly mangled. What was now knocking couldn't be. The son he knew. Mrs. White struggled with the locks, trying to open the door. "Help me! Let me open it!" she shouted. Mr. White frantically searched for the paw. He had to stop this. He grasped it with shaking hands and made the final wish. "I wish my son gone." The knocking suddenly stopped. Mrs. White flung open the door to see nothing. There was only the empty street, dimly lit by moonlight. The wind was quiet again. She stared into the night, hoping to see her son, but the road was empty. Mr. White stood behind her, silent, his face pale and full of dread. They both knew, without saying a word, that the wish had worked, and it had ended it all. The monkey's paw lay motionless on the table, its magic spent, its power exhausted. Outside, the night went on, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. And in the hearts of two parents, the silence screamed louder than any sound. Before wishing for something, think carefully whether you truly need it or not. Sometimes the best things happen by embracing life's natural course.